So changing our frames per second can create smaller file sizes in video, okay, which is a good thing. Now, when you record your videos on your phone, or if you use a DSLR camera, you can record in RAW format, essentially, so uncompressed format, okay? And the issue is having your videos in an uncompressed format, though fantastically recorded and gives you all the information like raw photos in photography. I don't know of many computers on the planet that can run videos at uncompressed video. Like it just, your computers can't do it, okay? So as video people, we have to combat file sizes all the time. And you know that from the web as well. You're constantly looking at your image file size, right? Because we don't want someone to have to download a 10 megabyte image, right? And it's no different in video. We want to try and have the best quality looking video at the smallest file size. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. So what else could we do to make the size of our videos smaller? So I'll answer my own question. Okay, we can change the physical size, right? We can take something that is in pixels very large and physically tell our video editing software, I want you to export out at this size, right? So physically make our video smaller. So your file size should be smaller, right? That makes sense. You've done that in photography. Shoot raw photos at a huge size, bring them into Photoshop, export them out at a smaller size, and that'll change the file size for you, okay? So changing the physical size of your video. Okay, some standard sizes from back in the day, okay? A little bit of a video history lesson here. Is standard definition is 640 pixels by 480 pixels. Okay. NTSC, National Television System Committee, broadcast digital video at 720 by 486. PAL, which is Europe, so England, would do their videos broadcast at 720 pixels wide by 576. Okay, these were some standard sizes in pixels way back when. Okay, thinking of remember the big TVs, the big tube TVs and the big backs on them, those really big ones. When broadcasters sent out their television, they used in North America this size. Okay, if you were in say England, it was this size. So if I was a producer of video or a video editor, I would export out my videos at the end, you know, using one of these sizes depending on where it was going to go. Okay, and that standard was around for a really long time. That size. Okay. Now, moving forward, it's just something good to know. Okay, kind of where we were a while ago. When I say a while ago, I mean, does everyone remember the transition between those big tube TVs and then the flat TVs? Okay, that's kind of the transitional period between sizes of video as a video editor, where I was working in this size and then the new sizes for those flat TVs that we all have now. Okay. You know, back in the day, and really it's no different now with your flat screen TVs. Like you could have a big tube TV that was 40 inches, you know, massive, probably weighed a ton. Okay. But you could put 720, 486 video on that TV and the quality looks fine. Okay, even though it's big. Okay. So just, that's where we kind of came from. Now with sizes. Now today, these are more common sizes that you're going to be working with. Generally speaking, well, we'll talk about this one first. HD video is 1280 pixels wide by 720 pixels high. And if you remember when that was a standard for a little while with our flat screen TVs, and you would purchase a TV that said at the bottom, usually down on the lower right corner, it said 720p or 720i, okay? And that was referring to essentially the pixel dimension. 720p is progressive, 720i is interlaced. I believe it stood for interlaced. So that was around for a while. So we jumped from those other sizes to this size. And they call it HD video. I like to call it kind of like baby HD, because that was like the baby of HD at the time. It became the baby. It changed standard-wise to full HD video, which is 1920 by 1080. That's what you're commonly going to work in. Okay, that's kind of like standard now. Okay, and thinking of YouTube, you know, you can set the different settings, right? Like you got 1080, you've got 720, you got 480. I think you have 642 in the different quality settings that you can set. But for like broadcast television, this is what I would export out as. Okay, 1920 by 1080. Okay, it's the standard. You got 2K video, 248 by 1080, 4K video, 3840 by 2160, and then 8K video. I've never done an 8K video in my life. It's not very standard. Okay, will we get there? Probably. I don't know how long it's going to take it, but 4K video. So sometimes I mentioned I completed a Sun Life financial video. Okay, so it's full of, in this video, I didn't shoot any photography. Okay, one was, the theme was Miami Beach, and the other one I did was for Quebec City. So I had to find stock footage. So what I mean by that is footage that I can buy that allows me to use it. Okay, and on these stock sites, for the longest time, you're really only going to be able to purchase 1920 by 1080 for the longest time. But now, people kind of skipped over the 2K and are doing 4K. So you can do 3840 by 2160, so I can download that. Okay. Are broadcasters doing, so broadcasters, when I say broadcasters, I'm talking about TV stations. Okay. Are they shooting out 4K video? There's 4K TVs, right? There is. Depends on the channel, truthfully. I don't know too many broadcasters that are doing 4K yet, but they're definitely doing this. This is the standard, okay? So in my class, or John's class, not that I want to speak for John, we're looking at this size, 1920 by 1080. Or sometimes a little smaller size, 1280 by 720. Okay? And I'll always ask you, or show you, or you ask me what resolution you want the video at. Okay. But those are kind of standard now. Okay, obviously more pixels, larger file size, right? But, okay, here's a question for you. In the video that I created, I exported my final video out at 1920 by 1080, okay, from Premiere. Did all my video editing in Premiere, exported out 1920 1080. Could I use a 4K video in my edit in Premiere? Could I? Sure, absolutely. Could I use an 8K? Sure, sure I could. But in the end, I could export it out at 1920 1080. Okay, makes sense? So this is my viewable area. So thinking of when we did prototyping, desktop was 1920 and the viewport was 1080 high. So I could put a 4K video inside that, right? It'd just be really large, okay? Which is physically really large. And that would be okay if I wanted to zoom into, like, say, somebody's face, because it's really large. Could scale it down too, right? It does give you some flexibility in your video editing, okay? Especially knowing that your final video is gonna be this size. So when I went to grab my stock footage, I grabbed a lot of 4K footage so that I could scale it down or leave it at a large size, right? It just gives a little bit more flexibility in your video editing. Okay. But those are some common sizes. Pixels wise. Okay, so changing the physical size of the video can create smaller file sizes. Is there something else that we can do to make smaller file sizes? We can drop the frame rate. We can physically make the video smaller. Okay, but there's some other things that we can do, or one other thing that we can do.
Height, length.
Length, absolutely, yeah, yeah. Make our videos shorter. Okay, but we, you know, when it comes to, say, we were doing broadcast television, the broadcaster tells you it has to be 30 seconds. It can't be 25. It has to be 30 seconds, right? So sometimes we can't use that as a, you know, kind of a way to make things smaller. Okay. This should resonate, hopefully. Compression, right? We can add compression to our videos. So in video, compression is called codec. We can use codecs to compress our video. Okay, and that will shrink the size. All right, so let's define what a codec is in video terms. And let's watch a commercial.
I'm Andrea, founder of the boutique handbag brand, Andy, and this is why I switched.
If you watch videos on the web, you use video codecs. But what exactly is a video codec? Codecs reduce large videos to more manageable sizes. This is called compression. Without codecs, serving video on the web would be almost impossible. Uncompressed or raw video simply requires too much data to transmit over even the fastest networks. For example, a 5-minute mobile video without compression uses over 3 gigabytes of data. A 5-minute HD video uses over 25 gigabytes. Files this large would take many hours to download to your computer for playback. On a mobile connection, they take weeks. So how does a codec shrink all that data to something that you can play on your device in seconds? Codecs use sophisticated algorithms to work their magic, but you don't need to know what a discrete cosine transform or entropy encoder is to understand the basics. The first thing to keep in mind is that digital videos are sequences of pictures called frames, much like the frames in conventional movie film. In most web video, there are about 30 frames per second of video. Because there are so many pictures per second of video, The picture in each frame varies only slightly from the frames before it and those after it. Codecs work by removing similarities in the uncompressed frames, keeping only the differences, and coding the differences as symbols. After all the redundancies are removed, the resulting data, called the encoded bit stream, uses far less data than the original uncompressed source. There are two parts to a codec, an encoder and a decoder. The encoder compresses the video stream into a binary encoded bit stream. The decoder restores the encoded bit stream back into sequential pictures or frames for playback. The encoding process results in some loss of the original video's quality. One test of a codec's quality is measuring the size of that loss. On the decoding side, simplicity and speed are perhaps the most important qualities of a codec. After all, a decoder isn't much use if no one's computer is powerful enough to run it. So that's a brief introduction to the world of video codecs. Next time you watch a video on the web, you'll know something about the amazing technology that makes it possible.
Okay, so that's kind of technical. Just understand that it does compression codecs. Okay, it doesn't, and I'll post this on FOL for you if you want to watch the video. It just compresses things down. Okay, so it is more manageable for your computers to run. Okay, like I had said previously, without compression on your video that at 1 minute, let's say, with an uncompressed video at 1 minute could be 5 gigs in file size. Same video compressed at 1 minute could be 50 megabytes. Okay, there's a drastic difference. And those of you who've maybe dealt with video in the past, there's no way your computer is going to run a 50 gig video. It just won't. It's not going to be powerful enough. So it'll be choppy and it just won't run. Okay. I don't know too many, if any, that could do uncompressed video and run it smooth. Are there computers out there? I'm sure there are. Okay, I'm sure there are. But the average computer probably won't do it. Okay. So when we optimize photos in Photoshop, we generally know what kind of compression we're going to get from the file extension that we use. Okay. So, like a JPEG. Talked about this last semester. I'm sure. You know, you have, thinking of in web terms, for an image like this, which 2 file formats would you use to export out from Photoshop or XD, let's say? Well, one would be JPEG, right? And the other one would be PNG, okay? Did you do the exercise in class where you got into groups and you exported out one image at different file formats? Yeah. Okay. If thinking back to that, same photo, right? Export out 2 different formats. Was the PNG or the JPEG generally smaller? Which one? JPEG or PNG? JPEG. So JPEG is a lossy compression in the file format. So it takes pixels and it throws away some pixels. And so, for instance, basically how it works is, okay, it'll analyze this area. And if there's 100 colors here, the algorithms in Photoshop will go, okay, 50 of these colors are similar, so I'm going to get rid of the other 50, and then just use those colors. And visually, we don't see much of a difference. Okay, we can, but why is PNG larger in file size? If this is lossy compression, PNG was the opposite, which is lost less compression. Okay, so it doesn't lose any, say, quality. Okay? It's not compressing it. It does, in its own way. Okay? So it's not the same in video editing when we export using codecs. Okay, you have a video file extension of .mov, .mpg, or .avi, for example. But you can have different codecs compressing that file extension. Okay, so JPEG does its own compression, and we know it's lossy because that's what a JPEG is. But I can have a video that is exported out at .mov and use 100 different codecs. Okay? But looking at the file extension of MOV won't tell me what kind of compression it's on. Okay, that's the first thing that we have to kind of understand. Okay? The compression or the codec can be one of many, depending on the file extension. Okay? Okay, it's getting a little technical, but so I could use a compression or a codec called Sorensen 3, Cinepack, Apple ProRes. These compression units or codecs have no bearing on the file extension's name. Okay? It's the first thing that we need to understand. So to add to that confusion, okay, to add to the confusion, we have some video file types do not work with some codecs. Okay, so for instance, I can create and export out at MOV, so .mov. Okay, but I can't compress it using the Indio codec. Okay, it just can't do it. Probably because, and this will become a theme, a .mov file extension is a QuickTime movie, which is Mac-based. Okay? Indio codec, I believe, is Microsoft-based. Does Microsoft like Apple? Does Apple like Microsoft? They kind of play sometimes. They kind of talk, but they don't all the time. Okay? So that becomes an issue. Back in the day, you just had to know this. I just had to know that, okay, I can't use this codec if I'm making an MOV. I'm going to show you nowadays, you'll just get a preset, which has made our lives easier. Adobe has made our lives super easy when it comes to compression. Okay? So, yeah, to add more confusion. Not that I want to add confusion. Okay? Some video formats and or video codecs don't work well with software or computers' hardware. Okay? So Mac computers can't export out a video to AVI without special software. Okay? Can't do it. AVIs for the PC user. Okay? We've all seen AVIs, correct? So that becomes a thing too. Getting like these decode errors. You ever play a video on your system and maybe you hear the audio, but you don't see the video, right? Kind of annoying. Or you see the video and you can't hear the audio, right? And it's because the video was compressed with a codec that your system doesn't have. Okay? Or just it won't work on your system. Okay? So like a decode error. So talking about playback, you all probably use VLC Media Player, okay? It pretty much runs anything, okay? There's that one that's really, really good, as well as, this is the one that I use, QuickTime Player, okay? Mac based, so I use the QuickTime Player. Right? Both are really good when it comes to playing back your videos and understanding the different codecs. Okay. So thinking of video, so does that make sense? Different codecs for different video types. Okay. Adobe's made our life easier by just giving us presets and options, so we don't have to go remember, you know, oh man, I can't use Indio codec to compress an MOV. Okay. What's going to happen once we do it is we'll go into Premiere, and then we'll get to it probably next week. We'll export it out. It actually goes to a whole different piece of software. Okay. It's called Media Encoder. And it will look at your video and then understand the platform that you're on, whether you're on a PC or on a Mac or whatever, and then it'll give you presets. And you can export out, say, a YouTube video. You can export out other types of file formats. Okay, it's super nice. One of the other things I want to talk about is essentially videos are made up of two layers. Video and audio, right? Kind of makes sense. If you've never done any video editing, when we bring in a video, like we're going to do today, you'll have a channel for the video, and you will have a channel in your timeline for the audio. They're separate. Okay. Now the video layer will get compressed using a video codec. The audio in the video will get compressed with a different codec, specific to audio. Okay? But in the end, the final output is one video. So that's another thing that we have to kind of understand is we can compress the video with different codecs, but we also at the same time compress the audio with different audio compression. Okay, they're different. So you can't say to Premiere, in my audio settings, when I export, I want to use Sorensen 3 because it's not an audio compression. It's only a video compression. I have to select from the options for audio compression. They're different. Okay, again, we're going to walk through this once we finish our video. That'll be next week, but okay. So there's two types of compressions. For example, in video.mov, the visual content in that video is compressed using the animation codec. But the same video, the audio is compressed using .mp3 compression. Okay, we're going to talk more about this. We're going to do like a little history lesson on MP3 because I think it's important. Because I really think it changed everything in what we do. Okay, two different layers, two different compressions, one file at the end. Okay. Okay. You may or may not know this. Does anyone know the answer to this question? What do you think is the biggest codec on the web today? Who's quick on Google? That's okay. The one that we're going to use, okay, the one that we're going to use is H.264. H.264. Okay. You'll probably use that in John's class. You'll definitely use it in my class. Okay. It is probably the most widely used codec for most streaming video sites. So like your YouTube, your movie trailers, that kind of thing. Any idea what YouTube used to use as a compression agent? No? Ever heard of Flash? Okay.
Yeah.
Back in the day when that was actually popular and it was a thing, it was used as a compressor and streaming of video. Okay? So remember H.264. Okay? H.264 will be a preset in Media Encoder that you're going to use. Okay? It does a good job of compressing your video so it's manageable. Okay? But visually it has great quality. Okay? This is kind of confusing, but it is actually. This file format, .mp4, and for my class, I always want .mp4s, okay, is essentially H.264. So it kind of breaks the rule. It is a file format that is compression. Okay. So I'm going to say to you, definitely for my class, when you export out your videos, I want this file format, .mp4. Okay? Because Zapple. It works on my system. The format of it is supported by all systems, so it works on a PC. It works on a Mac. Okay? It works in all major browsers. Okay? So this format, if you're going to put a video and link a video into your website that isn't connected through YouTube, you're going to want to make an MP4. Okay? That's compression recognized by all browsers. Now, for any videos that you give me, because we have a couple video assignments coming up that we'll talk about, don't give me an AVI, okay? Make sure it is an MP4. AVIs don't work on my Mac, okay? And I'm sure John is going to preach that to you as well. Some other formats for web, okay, other than MP4, is OGV, or sometimes you can see it as OGG. That works in basically every web browser. And WebM, it's another file format. Okay, Google came up with that one. So, out of those three, one option of those will work in basically every web browser. Okay, but this is the one that's going to be your go-to. Okay. Okay, talk about audio formats fairly quickly here. Just kind of should know, uncompressed audio files are .wav or WAV files, WAV format, or .aiff. I'm sorry, I can't remember what that stands for. At one time, this would be considered a PC audio format, and that would be considered a Mac format. But I believe, as time went on, this one is kind of more universal than that one. Okay? So compression on audio, the most popular one I would say is MP3. We all know about MP3s, yes? Okay. So MPEG Layer 3 Audio is what that stands for. MPEG being Motion Picture Expert Group, came up with that audio format. So when you export out your videos, you're going to want to select a compression agent of I don't feel like, well, I mean, MP3 kind of paved the way for other compression formats. Anyone ever heard of FLAC format? Okay, it was, I think it's dying out. It didn't get popular like MP3 did. And you'll find this with some file formats, okay? So MP3 is a compression agent, but it is a file format at the same time, in audio. FLAC was just a file type and compression agent as well. But you had to have the audio compression installed in your system. Okay. And people didn't want to do that, so this fizzled out. Okay, and you'll notice that with some file formats, like JPEG. There's a new one, the JPEG 2000. Does that ring a bell? You seen that? I think it's JPEG 2000. And it's basically JPEG came out with this new file format, but nobody uses it. Okay, so it's eventually, I feel like it's just gonna fade away into our history. Kind of like FLAC, right? So here's our history. MP3 pushed boundaries of file sharing on the web in the 90s. Who was born in the 90s? No. You guys were born in the 90s?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, well, I was in high school in the 90s, so I got a couple of years on you. All right. So, what was great about MP3 is being able to have good quality music, okay, at a really small file size. So it allowed us to share music, okay? So what I'm saying, to connect this a little bit, if I had a .wav file that was just music, okay, so Madonna's latest release in the 90s, that file size could be 50 megabytes. If I took that file and, well, I won't say that I did that, but, and converted it to MP3, that same file size could be 3 megabytes. Same quality though, same great sound, okay? In the 90s, okay, did we have great internet in the 90s? Do you remember the term called dial-up?
Yes.
Okay, so when we connected to the internet, we had to go through the phone,
Yes.
right? And it would used to do this kind of weird sound like, and you're like, what the hell is that? It's dialing up the internet through the phone. Okay, so high speed wasn't around. It was maybe in some schools, if that. Okay, high speed didn't even become a thing till I would say really early 2000s, whereas more out there. So if I'm dialing up the internet on my phone, do you think sharing a file that's 50 megabytes takes a while?
Yeah.
Damn straight. It took a long time, super long time. So file sharing was an issue. But now I could take it and turn it into an MP3 and I could share that file in minutes versus hours. Okay? That's a pretty big deal. Okay? Coming from that file format, I wouldn't dare share, a video on dial-up. So really, an audio format changed the way, in my opinion, the way we use the web when it comes to sharing files. Okay? It really revolutionized it, but it also revolutionized the way we listen to music. and purchase it, right? How do you listen to your music now? Streaming?
On YouTube.
YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. YouTube. What was the other one? Spotify. I always call it Shopify. I don't know why. Spotify. Shopify is e-commerce, but Spotify, Apple Music, right? That's what we use. Okay. Back in the day, it was you had to buy CDs and cassettes and records. Does anybody have a record player? Cool. I just bought my first record player from when I was a kid over Christmas. And I went to a record store. It was awesome. I loved it. There's something about having something tangible in your hands, in my opinion. Anyways, so it changed the game. An audio format changed the game because it was smaller file size, made it easier to share. So what happened then? What do you think happened? Us older generation who used to have to buy a CD, spend $25 on a CD for 10 songs, 5 of them were great, the other 5 sucked, but I still had to spend the $25. So what happened? Did everyone just kind of start taking music? Yeah, we did. Okay? It was everywhere. It was absolutely everywhere. File sharing. And this was the culprit. Any idea whose logo this is? No, not them. No idea? This should be ingrained in your brain. They were the biggest culprit of all. They're called Napster. Okay? And you've never seen this logo? Oh my goodness. Napster. They created software that allowed people to download it and share music from my computer to your computer, from your computer to your computer, and so forth. Created a network of file sharing.
So it was someone that's like you said, Kazam?
Kazam, LimeWire. LimeWire was there was companies or software packages that came later. Okay, as the internet got better, we would share. You could share software and all the piracy kind of stuff, right? I'm not going to get into that, but they were the ones that helped create this. Well, really kind of changed the way we do things when it comes to music and sharing. So it's a person-to-person sharing program that really started with sharing MP3s. Okay? Almost totally brought down the entire music industry, right? Because we're not spending money anymore. We're getting all our music for free. Okay? All our music for free. Oh, it was a fabulous time. It was a fabulous time back then. To a point where when I graduated, I remember I worked in a company in Kitchener, and we had a server, okay? And on the server, we had an area just for MP3s. And if you weren't actually working on something, you were downloading MP3s so that everybody could listen to it in the office. Okay? So the music industry had to combat this, and that's why you have Spotify. That's why you have Apple Music, because they make money that way. Okay? And music professionals lost their mind on this, because what are we doing? We're stealing from them. We're taking money out of their pockets, essentially. Okay? There was one band, and I'll set this up and see if you know who it is. One band that really lost their mind. And this is how it kind of happened in the early days of MP3. The band just finished their album out in LA. Okay? recorded it. It's gonna have a massive release party and so forth and so on. Okay? The drummer from the band is in his vehicle and he's driving in LA and he's listening to the radio and he hears the song on the radio that they just recorded and hadn't released yet. Happy or mad guy? Pretty mad guy. Okay? Pretty mad guy. And from that point on, they were advocates against Napster and file sharing like that. Okay? You're going to have a big release party for your album, and people, you know, millions of people are already listening to it, and you're making no money from it. Okay? Any idea who the band is? Any idea? Out of all the bands? Is a rock band. Heavy metal band.
Def Leppard?
No, it wasn't Def Leppard. Kind of heavier than Def Leppard.
Black Sabbath.
Metallica?
Metallica was the band that took them to court and tried to stop it. And I believe won, and Napster went away. Okay? And Napster went away. Ah, Ross, did you know I know Spanish? A little bit of a history lesson, but in saying that, it does tie into the theme of creating videos and audio in our videos. Truthfully, in my opinion, that changed the game. A file format, okay, a compression format on how you guys listen to music today. Okay, pretty crazy that can happen. Okay, I'm gonna say let's do 5 minutes because we gotta jump into Premiere. We gotta do something today. So take 5 minutes and then make sure you have Premiere running. Make sure you've downloaded that video for me, and then we'll jump into it. Okay?